With the turn of the new millennium, the Resident Evil series had two game releases in the year 2000, both being considered to be side projects from the main series, yet they were extremely different from each other in almost every way. Survivor was a poorly received first-person shooter on the PlayStation with completely new characters in a new setting, and Code Veronica was a critically acclaimed return to the third-person classic style, with the returning characters of Claire and Chris Redfield, and was originally only on the Dreamcast. The only similarities I can think of is that both games take place on an isolated island, both have zombies that you shoot, and both have a main character who claims to be Leon's friend. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that arc.
That's right. At the request of my friend, Leon S. Kennedy, I came here to investigate. Oh, yes. I remember everything.
So Capcom's next decision was to do what? Combine both of these games into one idea, but not originally for a home console. But there was actually another release that happened in late 2000. November 2000 saw the release of the first Resident Evil film. Well, kinda. Capcom collaborated with Visual Science Laboratory to create a 20-minute film completely animated in 4D. The short film, entitled Biohazard 4D Executor, was written by Daisuke Okamoto and directed by Koichi Owada, and is a non-canonical story about UBCS soldiers being sent to Raccoon City in order to find a scientist named Dr. Cameron, who is conducting research on a new virus. At just under 20 minutes long, it is sort of considered to be like a theme park attraction, as it is still shown in Japan in small theaters, complete with a 4D experience, meaning you can view the film while sitting in chairs that shake and blow air at you at certain parts. It is known for having strong graphic violence, so if you manage to experience it this way, it can be a thrilling experience. I say this, but I for sure have never experienced it this way, although I did watch it online a number of years back. Obviously without the shaking chair, unless I did that myself. But it's cool to see that this was an early all CGI film, and it was the first real Resident Evil adaptation to a screen. But watching it on a little computer screen or on your phone or something, yeah, it's a much less memorable experience. So going back to Resident Evil 3's development, there were still plans to release a prequel game called Resident Evil 0 for the Nintendo 64, with the intent to have it be released in late 2000. However, in a somewhat similar situation with RE3 and Sony suddenly announcing the PlayStation 2, Nintendo announced in August of 2000 that the successor to the Nintendo 64 would see its release, the Nintendo GameCube. As Capcom was having difficulties with storage on the soon-to-be outdated N64 cartridges, and not really being pleased with how RE0's development was going, the release was to be delayed and readjusted to eventually be a GameCube release instead. Another game went into development to be the series' first handheld release, as this game was announced in May of 2001 under the name Resident Evil Gaiden. But with Code Veronica X seeing its release on the new PlayStation 2 throughout 2001, the series finally had a release on Sony's hyped-up system. The PlayStation 2 was released in March of 2000 in Japan, late October of 2000 in North America, and then in November 2000 in Europe and Australia. 2001 had a few notable survival horror game releases for the PlayStation 2, like Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, the fourth game in a series that was a catalyst for Resident Evil reaching the success that it did. The Fatal Frame series kicked off at the end of 2001, which is a pretty beloved Japanese horror series where you use a camera to capture ghosts. But the big release in 2001 is what many consider to be the pinnacle of survival horror games, Silent Hill 2. It was a shock to me to see that Silent Hill 2 actually sold less than Code Veronica X did on the PS2, as it had such a widespread appreciation and all, while also considering that Code Veronica had been out for over a year before CVX was. Resident Evil was still the king of the genre in terms of sales, although it hadn't been quite as strong as it was in the mid to late 90s. Many consider Silent Hill 2 to be a game changer for survival horror, as it really told a deep and disturbing story, all while being genuinely terrifying at times. I talk about that a bit more in my personal Silent Hill retrospective video too. But before releasing the next game on the PlayStation 2, Capcom struck a deal with arcade company Namco to create a light gun arcade game. In keeping with the recent tie-in of the new Code Veronica releases, this arcade game was given the title Gun Survivor 2 Biohazard Code Veronica. This arcade system stayed exclusive to Japan though, and it made its way into arcades in July of 2001. But of course, the reason to bring this up is because this game was also eventually ported to the PlayStation 2, but only in Japan and Europe, with new director Tomoshi Sadamoto at the helm. It saw its release in Japan on November 8th, 2001, and in Europe on March 22nd, 2002. At first glance, this release may be a bit confusing, as it is literally combining the titles of the series' last two releases, but it makes sense if you knew that it was originally for the arcades. It clearly looks to be a sequel to Survivor with the name Gun Survivor 2, but also Code Veronica. Is this a reimagining of the Code Veronica story? Is it taking the characters from Survivor like Ark Thompson and putting him on Rockford Island during the events of Code Veronica? Is this a sequel to Code Veronica?
And what is going on?
Well, if you were to have seen the arcade machine existing back then, Claire Redfield is absolutely on the label, so it's safe to assume that we won't be hearing from Ark Thompson's mother anytime soon.
It's me, your mother.
My mother?
So let's see what this thing is all about, because to be honest with you, I have never played this game to this day. So this will actually be me checking out the game cover, the manual, and the game itself for the first time. But first, real quick, I think it's about time to discuss the endings of both Survivor and Code Veronica to help give some context here. So, spoilers ahead for those games. In Resident Evil Survivor, you play as a protagonist suffering from amnesia, and he is unsure of who he is or why he's there, or if he's the good guy or the villain. By the end, he learns that he is Ark Thompson, and he was sent to Sheena Island to infiltrate an Umbrella facility to help take them down while posing as the leader of the facility, Vincent Goldman. After a tyrant kills the real Vincent, Ark successfully takes down the tyrant and escapes the island along with two children that were there, Lot and Lily. It's a very short game with little to no future relevance to the series, but I felt it was important to mention because this next game is considered to be Survivor 2. In Code Veronica, Claire Redfield gets captured by Umbrella while looking for her brother Chris. She ends up on Rockford Island, a prison and military facility that recently experienced a T-virus outbreak. After teaming up with another prisoner, 17-year-old Steve Burnside, Claire and Steve escape the island after a skirmish with the island's commander, Alfred Ashford, who also poses as his sister, Alexia. But Claire and Steve are redirected to another base in Antarctica. Meanwhile, Chris Redfield arrives at Rockford Island to rescue Claire, where he learns that Albert Wesker is indeed still alive, now possessing superhuman power. Chris makes his way to Antarctica, Steve gets captured and mutates from the T. Veronica virus before his death. Wesker escapes, and Chris manages to take down Alexia, who had mutated into a giant dragonfly. The Redfield siblings escape the base. So how do these two stories merge into one game? Let's check it out. The Japanese cover is pretty interesting to me, as the primary character featured in the middle is Steve and not Claire. Taking up most of the foreground is him holding one of the golden Lugers that you find in that game. Off to the left is a smaller image of Claire, and to the right is a tyrant. It's actually a pretty nice looking cover, although it doesn't really clarify what this game exactly is. In the bottom right corner, it does show the GunCon 2 logo though, so that's made pretty clear that it uses that. But oh god, the European cover. I'm just going to say it, this is one of the absolute worst game covers in the whole series. It might even be last, but there's another cover that I also hate. I guess this is supposed to be a close-up of a zombie or one of the Bandersnatches or something, but it's just an ugly blurred image of an unpleasant looking tannish brown color, and oh man, the eyes. We get two identical line-drawn images of what I assume is Claire's face meant to be reflected, but everything about this cover is so cheap and lazy looking. It gets worse the more you look at it. The Japanese cover is better by a long shot, and I don't know why they didn't use that one for the European release. But in regards to the instruction manual, yeah, I couldn't find one anywhere online. So instead, let's look at the back of the case to maybe get a better understanding of what this is all about. Get ready to confront your darkest fears head-on as Resident Evil returns from the dead. What? Code Veronica X came out just a few months ago. Oh, I get it. Dead. Okay. Set across 5 huge levels of flesh-crawling action, Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica is a first-person gun shooter that places the player directly into action as they attempt to solve the mysteries surrounding the evil Umbrella Corporation. In Survivor 2, guns don't guarantee survival. They just give you a fighting chance. 5 levels, huh? Well, since this is a port of an arcade game, I'm going to guess that this is a very short experience. Also, still don't know exactly what this game is. Supports various light gun peripherals, including the brand new G-Con 2 controller from Namco. Free-roaming gun shooter game, Survivor 2 allows the player to move freely within the levels. Alright, so it's not on rails, got it. 3 modes of play, arcade, dungeon, and ranking, and other secret modes to unlock, including Versus Roach mode. 2 different characters to choose from initially, with a further 2 more secret characters to unlock. Multiple weapons including the assault rifle, shotgun, and magnum. Special weapons to open up include the rocket launcher and the all-powerful linear launcher. So, judging just off of this, I am under the impression that this game is just the Code Veronica story, but in the first-person perspective and abridged down to 5 levels. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Survivor 1. And you can choose between Claire or Steve and can unlock 2 more. And I don't know, I'm not really sold on this idea, to be honest. If I had just beaten Code Veronica, this is trying to get me to do it again, but now in first person. Well, let's just get right into the game.
Resident Evil.
We basically just get a few short cutscenes of Claire and Steve fighting some zombies. That's about all we get for setup here. There's the exact same soundbite from Code Veronica for the Resident Evil, and then you choose Claire or Steve, which mode you want to play, and whether you're using the PlayStation 2 controller or the G-Con 2. Arcade mode is the standard mode that, well, you would have played in the arcade. It's the main story here where you try to advance and rack up points. Dungeon mode is similar, but you're completing missions in a time limit, kind of like the Mercenaries mode for this game. And Versus Roach mode is actually just how it sounds. You're fighting cockroaches. For simplicity's sake, let's just look at the arcade mode. So you're shown a small map of the prison as the game gives you some objectives. Find a key and evacuate through the door on which the Biohazard symbol is drawn. In the intro scene, there is no voice acting, but a reimagining of the scene of Claire entering the graveyard for the first time. She encounters Steve here, and now it's time to get right into the game and... Wait, what? Remaining time before Nemesis gets loose? What is this game? Well, your HUD screen is kinda similar to how it looked in Survivor, with your equipped weapon and health in the bottom left corner, but also a map of the area in the bottom right. You're told exactly what to do as you just aim your cursor on the screen at what to shoot and then move through the prison area with it looking pretty close to how it did in Code Veronica. After only a couple minutes of intense shooting action, you get to a boss fight, a giant spider. So you just shoot it for a few seconds and then bam, Area 1 is clear. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And yes, you are absolutely on a time limit, and if that timer runs out, Nemesis does indeed show up, and he will one-hit kill you if he catches you. So this game is not only a combination of Survivor and Code Veronica, it's now also part Resident Evil 3. Because, well, I honestly don't know if this is a spoiler for the game or not, but it's not really a game you can spoil. But this game apparently takes place after Code Veronica as a dream that Claire is having while on the plane home. Why Nemesis is here though, yeah, I don't know. Nemesis is synonymous with Jill, so if it's Claire in this game, you should be stalked by the tyrant that enters the RPD in RE2, Mr. X. But of course, Nemesis is more beloved and recognizable. It's sorta like how in later Silent Hill games they have Pyramid Head show up at random times, even if it doesn't match up with the characters in that particular story. But Pyramid Head is recognizable, just like Nemesis, so just throw the characters in anywhere. But that's honestly pretty much the gist of the game. A short look at a short game. It's not meant to be complicated by any means. It's not meant to continue on with a big overarching story. It's just meant to be a light gun arcade game set in the Code Veronica universe that you play for a little while and that's it. Checking out how long to beat, the main game can be completed in about 43 minutes. I will say that this would have been fantastic to see in an actual arcade while killing some time and throwing a few quarters into it. I would flock right to a machine I found with the name Gun Survivor 2 Code Veronica. But, at least in my opinion, porting that arcade game to the PlayStation 2 was pretty unnecessary. And I guess Capcom felt the same way because it never made its way to North America, so it just gives off a lot of low-effort cash grab vibes. If you love the game, then that's great that you can play it at home, but unnecessary is really the main word I can think of to describe this. Sales-wise, it only ended up selling a little over 100,000 copies, although, again, with it not even reaching the North American market. Reception-wise, yeah, I don't know, nobody seems to even care about this game. It tends to place right near or at the very bottom on a lot of Resident Evil game ranking lists. It doesn't even have a review score on Metacritic. It's just kinda there. I said in my Survivor video that that game was really the first misstep for the series, but yeah, this is the next one. And yet, even after all that, this is still the second part in the Gun Survivor series that spawned off 4 total games. Just to make things more confusing, in 2002, Capcom released the third entry in the Gun Survivor series, but this time taking place in the Dino Crisis universe with a game called Dino Stalker. This game did actually get a release in North America too. But then the fourth Gun Survivor game was back to the Resident Evil series in 2003 that I will soon get to in its own video. It's just a strange entry here where it all ends up being a dream Claire is having and taking under an hour to complete. What a terrible European cover too. Next time, we're going to be staying in the year 2001 and going straight to an exclusive Nintendo game. But also like with Survivor and Code Veronica's release dates, we're back to some overlap with release dates by region because the next release in Europe was different from the next release in North America and Japan. I'll explain it all in the next one. Join me next time as we take a look at Resident Evil Gaiden. Paraspectre will return.